Hello everyone and welcome to this UK Data Service webinar about UK and cross-national surveys. I'm Jen Buckley and I'm joined today by my colleague Rihab Dahab, and we're both part of the UK Data Service User Support and Training team and based at the University of Manchester. Okay, so I'll now pass you over to Rihab to give us an overview of today's session.
Thanks, Jen. Good afternoon. This is what we are going to be covering today. I will start briefly introducing the UK Data Service. We will then move to our main topic, survey data. And we will talk about the data and the documentation available to help make sense of data. And we'll give you tips of accessing and working with survey data. We will also take you on a tour of our website and show you how to find data and documentation. And then we will have time for questions at the end. What's the UK Data Service? It's a comprehensive resource funded by the Economic and Social Research Council. We aim to provide access and support to a wide range of social science data. In addition to providing data, we also provide support and give training and guidance to our users. In terms of the data we provide, we can divide them into 7 main types. So we have the UK and cross-national surveys, and these are the ones we are going to talk about today. But we also have other kinds of data you might be interested in. So we have longitudinal data, and this is the kind of survey data that follows individuals over time. We also have international data. We also have international data sets like the World Bank Development Indicator and also the United Nations Statistics. We have data also from the UK census in the form of aggregate, boundary, and flow data. We also have microdata, census microdata. We have got business data and a range of qualitative and mixed method data sets. You will find more information about these types of data on our website, and we are holding webinars about different data types throughout the autumn. Our key UK and cross-national survey data is a rich source for social resources and include our most commonly used data collections. So the surveys are primarily of individuals or sometimes households. Many are commissioned by government departments for policy purposes or universities, and are well designed by experienced organizations such as Office of National Statistics and the National Center for Social Research, NATCEN. The key characteristics of these surveys include large sample size. So the sample sizes range from 1 to 2,000. And they are up to around 60,000, such as in the labor force survey, for example. The surveys also, the process of the sampling of these surveys are designed in such way to be nationally representative. Many of these surveys are repeated frequently. So when repeated, these surveys use the same or similar sets of questions, but of course on new samples of individuals or households. And this repetition creates repeated cross-national, cross-sectional survey data, which is of course suitable to be used to look at trends over time and differences between groups in the population. Similarly, for cross-national surveys, the same survey instruments are used across many nations with comparable methods, and of course, field work protocol. So the resulting data can be used to compare countries and to analyze how within country relationships vary across countries. So for instance, one example could be cross-national differences in the distribution of household tasks. Also, many cross-national surveys are repeated, so they allow analysis of changes over time. UK and cross-national surveys data are at the individual level. So they could be people or sometimes households. These types of data are called micro data. In the screenshot here, you can see the data, how it looks like when you download them in a statistical package. In this case, we downloaded in the data in SPSS. As you can see, each row has data from one case, a person in this data set. Then in each column, there are variables, and these variables are based on the answers to the survey questions. So you can see the person in the first row here is a female, and she is between 25 and 54 years old. She is single, and thankfully she is in a good health. To access microdata for analysis, you can either download datasets from our website and do the analysis in statistical software such as SPSS, Stata, or R, for example. And the data are available in our website in the form of SPSS, Stata, or TAP format. Alternatively, for many surveys, you can also use an online system called Nestar. And with the Nestar, you can browse information about the survey. You can also do simple analysis and visualization. Also, you can download tables, graphs, and subsets of data. Jen will show you Nestor in the website demonstration later on. Now in terms of the topics covered in these surveys, our key UK and cross-national surveys provide data on a wide range of topics. So for example, we have large-scale surveys focused on employment, health, family finance, crime, attitude, and housing. There are other topics covered, but these are the main themes. Most surveys are conducted through verbal interviews, but many other methods of collecting data are also used. To give you an idea of the variety of data collected, we have a quick question. A quick quiz question will soon appear. A list in a pool, list various forms of information relating to individuals and housing. This will show in the screen now. So which do you think are collected as part of any UK survey? Well, this was a bit of a cheat, as they all are. The living cost and food survey collect details of expenditure on food and spending diaries. The English housing survey includes respondent reports on housing conditions. And for health survey for England, a nurse visit smaller sample of participants include both a blood and saliva test, as well as taking height and weight measurements. And the National Survey for Sexual Attitudes and Lifestyles asks detailed questions about sexual behaviors, experience, and views. Okay, now over to Jen. She will give you some examples of survey data.
Okay, so to give you more insight, I'm going to look a little bit closer at some specific surveys. I'm going to start with the British Social Attitude Survey, or BSA. So the BSA is measures public attitudes in Britain. And its aim is to give a source of data that means we can examine sort of both continuity and change in social attitudes over time. And it's been running most years since 1983, so it therefore gives us more than 30 years of data on public attitudes. The survey now has a sample of about 3,000 each year, and it includes some core questions which are asked each time, and then there are also modules that ask questions on sort of more detailed questions on specific social, economic or political issues. And this is quite common across survey data, that you might have a set of core questions and then some that are repeated less often, but still allow you to look at that change over time. So with this change, what you might find is that if you're looking for data as well, you might need to look at a few different years to find the actual data set with the variables that you're interested in. So just to illustrate some of the things that you might find when looking at the BSA, here is a finding from the BSA in 1987 about the proportion of people who support traditional gender roles. So that is the idea that men should earn the money and women should look after the home and family. So in 1987, according to the BSA, 48% of people supported the traditional view of gender roles. And this question was also asked in 2017. So what proportion, we're now going to ask you in a poll, do you think supported the view that men should bring in the money and women should look after the home and family? So you should see the options on your screen now. Okay, so we've got half of people think about 22%, and then 15 and 8 are on a split. Okay, so if we go back to the slides, we'll find out the answer. The answer was 8%. So only 8% of people still believed in the gender roles in 2017. So it's quite a shift of attitude. And the BSA shows loads of these changes in public opinion over time. Now, this infographic comes from one of the BSA reports, and these come out annually and are available online via NatSen, who are the data collectors here. And they're a brilliant resource for just getting an insight into the data as well, because they produce all the headline statistics. And many of the survey producers publish this kind of summary report, which helps to get an insight. So my next example is the labour force survey. So this is one of the largest UK surveys and one of the most detailed on our website. And it asks questions on topics related to the UK labour market. And it's the sort of data sort of underlying the official measures of employment and unemployment. Other sort of topics that included are things like occupation, contracts, working hours, and then related topics such as education and training. So it's been a quarterly survey, so conducted every quarter since 1992, and there's about 60,000 people are interviewed each quarter. And then the quarterly data sets are released after each quarter. So there's quite a regular amount of data that's released through the year. And in addition to these quarterly data sets, there are several derived data sets. So we have longitudinal data sets. So when individuals take part in the labour force survey, they are asked questions in 5 consecutive quarters. And the longitudinal data sets have the linking of individuals between either 2 or 5 quarter, so it allows some analysis of individual change over time. And there's also a Eurostat version of the dataset, which is prepared to be harmonised by Eurostat with other European countries in the European Labour Force Survey. So the next example is the Health Survey for England. So this is a well-used UK survey that's designed to monitor trends in health, with questions about topics, general health, long-standing illness, smoking and alcohol. Again, there's a core questionnaire covering these topics, and then there's like a focus topic for the year, and these are then repeated at various intervals to allow the monitoring of change. The survey's run since 1991. There's 13,000 interviews each year. And as we touched on the quiz before, the survey combines a mixture of a questionnaire and then a nurse visit that involves the taking of physical measurements and also a taking of a blood sample. Similar to the BSA, you can find a report. So this image on your screen comes from the Health Survey for England report, and that's a good way to kind of explore and get a sense of what kind of data is available. My last example is one of the cross-national surveys. So the Eurobarometer is one of the longest running surveys. It's been going since the 1970s, and it's conducted on behalf of the European Commission with the aim of looking at social and political attitudes in Europe, so how they vary across countries and then also vary over time. And it involves interviews with individuals in each of the EU countries. Now, the Eurobarometer data is actually held by Geistes Data Archive in Germany. However, you can find details of many of the cross-national surveys within our data catalogue, and then we will then redirect you to the place where you can access the data if it's not held by the UK Data Archive. We'll now move on to some issues to consider when using survey data, and the first one of these is the survey documentation. So this can include a mixture of different types of documents. So there's often a user guide with information about the survey design, how data was collected, so field work, and some sort of details around response rates and things like that. Weights in the survey. Then there's also often a questionnaire, and sometimes these might be combined within the same documentation. And these documents are really key to understanding the data. So they give you all the information you need to know about the questions that were asked, who answered particular questions, how the survey was conducted, and then also any changes that the producers, data producers have done to the data from its raw form. And all of the documentation is available on our website. I'm going to show you some of the documentation as part of the demonstration in a moment, but before then, here's just one example. So on the screen, there is a box with information about a variable in a dataset. In this case, it comes from the Labour Force survey. And it tells us that the variable relates to whether someone is working full or part-time. And you can see the labels for each of the values for each labels for each value of this variable. So in this case, we can see that individuals with a 3 are classed as working part-time, but because they couldn't find a full-time job. So this would be a very interesting variable to look at if you were interested in the idea of employment and underemployment. Underneath, we then get information about frequency. So here it tells us that the variable is included each quarter, and it has been since '92. And then there are details of coverage. So the variable relates only to respondents who are employed or self-employed, which makes sense that you'd only ask this question to someone who's employed. And what we therefore see is a lot of not applicable responses in the data. And so this is quite useful when using the data, because you might end up in a situation where you're looking at a variable and there's a lot of non-applicable responses and you're not sure why. If you look into the documentation, it'll tell you things like about coverage, so who was asked that question and what was the reason other people weren't asked this question. Here, it also tells us it's a derived variable, so this variable is created using other variables. And it lets us know that you can find out more information about derived variables in volume 4 of the user guide. So if you follow all the leads, you could then trace this variable back to the actual sort of questions that were asked in the survey. Next, when using survey data, survey weights are another important issue that comes up. So most survey datasets contain a type of variable called survey weights, and these are designed to help ensure that the data represents the population it was designed to reflect. And not using weights could mean that your results are incorrect. Now, I can't go into the details of survey weights in this webinar here, but what I can say is that they tend to be easy to apply in statistical packages, and that the survey documentation will include all the details of any survey any survey weights that are in the data set. We also have a range of other resources that can help you if you come to working with survey data. So we have a guide to what is weighting, and there's also videos about using weights, which you can find on our website or YouTube channel. And more generally, we have some guides to specific statistical packages, which include information about how to apply the weights. And there's also online an interactive learning module, they're called the data skills module, and there's one on survey data, and that covers a lot of the basics of how you work with survey data, including survey weights. When it comes to accessing data, you'll find that data is available under different types of license. These different arrangements relate to the risk of potential disclosure. So all survey microdata are anonymised, but when providing sort of detailed information about a person, there are some potential risks that someone could potentially be identified. And when these risks become present, access to data becomes more restricted. So we have a small amount of what we call open data with surveys. That, in this case, for survey data, it can only be used for teaching. If you want to use survey data in research, you need to access data via something called the end user license. And it's quite simple to get. What you need to do is register with the UK Data Service, and then you are free to download these kinds of data from the website. And with these datasets, it's very unlikely to lead to disclosure. But when you do agree to the end user license, you are agreeing that you won't try to identify anyone in the data, and you won't share that data with anyone else. Datasets that do contain more potentially disclosive information then might have some special conditions attached or require a sort of secure access data arrangement. And with survey data, this tends to apply most with data with lower levels of geography in. So under the end user license with survey data, you tend to find that there won't be any detailed geographical information. And to get that, you need to go through a process of applying for more secure data. If you do find you need to access data securely, there's lots of information on our website about the process and how you go through it. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to move over to the website to show you how to access and download survey data. Okay, so just before I go through this, just as a warning that our website is due to change at the end of the month, and hopefully it'll be a lovely new revised interface for you. In general, the content's not going to change, but the appearance and navigation might change a bit. So some of what I'm telling you today might not apply after the end of October, but generally you should be able to find the same things. So I'm going to start with a search from the home page. So we've got a box on the front of the home page here, and we can search directly from this point into the data catalogue. So I'm going to start by typing in a search term. In this case, I'm going to type in crime and then press search. And this takes us through to the data catalogue. I think by default it will search that term, it will search for that in the title, description or keywords for an item in the catalogue. And it's brought up, so here are the results on the screen here, and there's 467 results for crime. It's quite a lot of results, and it can be more than this depending on the term you're using. And the size of the data collection can make it hard to find the right data, but then there are the options to sort and refine. So here we can sort by things like most recent, relevance, or alphabetically. And then there's also options to refine. So we can refine by data type, and we can look for UK survey data. We can also search by series. So this is quite useful for searching for survey data. So it looks for series, so where there's lots of different surveys, an ongoing survey programme, and it looks at these. So here we've got things like the crime survey for England and Wales. If we click on any of these items, it will then take us through to that particular record. Other ways to find data are available under the Get Data menu. So we have data by theme. So these are things like ageing. We've also more recently got the COVID-19 theme page, and this will provide a summary of sort of key items, collections on a particular topic. And then for UK survey data, the key data pages are very useful. So this brings together all the major UK surveys as a list, and you can switch by tab looking at all the key cross-national surveys as well. So as I say, if we click on an item, it will then take us through. So this is a series page for the British Social Attitude Survey. So it gives us information about the BSA as a series, and then it takes us through to an option to access data here. So I'm going to click on that and then have a little look underneath, and you can see that there is a item in the catalogue for each year of the British Social Attitude Survey, and if you click on one, it will take you through to the record for that particular year. Catalogue records are all consistent, so you get summary information about the collection, the item here, and then if we scroll down, there is an abstract that provides more detailed information about the survey and the survey from that particular year as well. There is a separate tab at the top to access the documentation, so here we'll have a little look at the documentation. So there's a user guide for the British Social Attitude Survey, and this will provide us with all the background information we need to understand the survey. So we've got all the details of the sample, we've got the information about weighting, and then some information about analysing particular types of variables that are there. And in this case, there's a separate document that we can look at that has the exact survey questions in, so you can see exactly what was asked and what options were. And then when it comes to accessing data, we just click on the button here. If we want to download it, we will need to register or log in, and it will prompt us to do that. And then there's also the option to explore online. So I'll just show you this so you can see what Nestar looks like. So with Nestar, you get the background information from the catalogue record about the particular item. And then there's a navigation pane on the right here. So if you look under the variable description option, it then brings down a set of topics from the survey. And then you can open up any one of these and look at particular questions that are in that section. So here, this is newspaper readership, and I can click on one, and then you can get down to the actual variable level. And if you don't log in, you just sort of do this browsing, you can see information at the variable level. So we get the question, we get the values, and we also get the frequencies as well, and any issues around sort of missing cases. So this is another good way of getting a feel for a data set and seeing if it might be useful for you. There are options with Nest Start to do some other types of analysis. If you're logged in and registered, you can create tables and do correlation and create some charts and tables, which can then be downloaded directly via Nest Start. You can also download subsets of data as well. I'm just going to return to the home page. So at the moment, all of our resources around using data are under use data. So we have sections with guides and video tutorials and the data skills modules. With the new website, these will be available under a new sort of training section that will include resources by topic. So there'll be a section on survey data, and all of the useful resources for working with survey data will be under there. And we'll also bring in information about upcoming events, which at the moment is available under news and events. And we can see all the latest events that are there. We also have a help section as well. So we run a help desk service for problems in finding, accessing or understanding data. And you can use this general contact, and then the query will be put through to the relevant team. So we're just coming to the end of the presentation. I'll just go back and highlight a few things that we have coming up. So upcoming events, I think as Rihab mentioned at the beginning, we've got a series of webinars running through the autumn looking at different types of data. There's also a webinar designed specifically for dissertation students who might be choosing their topics at the moment. And we've got a general introduction to the UK data service. But there's more running past the autumn, so do have a look on the website and browse through. And as I've mentioned a few stages, we've got these data skills modules. So if you do feel like you need to learn more about how you might manage working with survey data, you can have a look at these. It's all done through units, and there's some videos and interactive exercises and quizzes to sort of help you learn about working with survey data.